In the heart of Masara, a small village nestled at the foot of ancient mountains, life unfolded slowly, like the gentle flow of a river. Days began with the songs of birds perched high in the trees, and nights ended under a blanket of stars. The villagers were content with their way of life, which had gone unchanged for generations. Boys grew up to become farmers, hunters, or craftsmen, following in the footsteps of their fathers. Girls tended to the home, learned the ways of cooking, weaving, and caring, and eventually married young to start families of their own. For most of the villagers, education ended after the early years of school. They learned enough to read and write, handle simple sums, and follow traditions. University was a foreign word, something they had heard in passing but had never truly grasped. They arrived on a bright morning, their clothes neat and pressed, their shoes polished until they shone. They carried books and spoke of things that sounded strange and distant to the people of Masara. Their voices filled the village square as they spoke of universities, inventions, and machines that could make even the most laborious tasks seem easy. The villagers gathered around the visitors, captivated by their tales of life beyond the mountains. They marveled at stories of buildings that touched the sky and machines that could plant rows of crops with a single sweep. They listened to descriptions of classrooms where books and computers taught lessons that went far beyond reading and arithmetic. It was as if the students were speaking of another world, one the villagers had never known but suddenly longed to see. The village chief, Tembo, a tall man with a crown of silver hair and a voice as deep as the earth, watched the students with quiet awe. As they spoke, he noticed the excitement in the eyes of his people, a murmur of amazement and curiosity. He saw the way the villagers looked at the students, how the children's faces lit up with wonder, and the way the young men and women leaned in, their eyes wide and eager. Chief Tembo murmured to himself, his hand stroking his beard thoughtfully. The village council gathered that night under the mighty Omo tree, a towering symbol of their roots and heritage, with its thick branches stretching high into the sky. The Omo tree had witnessed every decision, every change, and every ceremony Masara had held for generations. The council sat in a circle, speaking quietly among themselves. The eldest among them, Elder Biko, cleared his throat and said,
"Perhaps it is time for us to think beyond the hills, beyond our familiar fields and rivers."
Elder Biko's words were met with murmurs of agreement and a few uneasy glances. For all of them, Masara was home, and to think of a life beyond it felt both thrilling and unnerving. But who? One of the council members asked, breaking the silence. Who among us would go? We are simple people. The city's ways are not ours. Chief Tembo nodded, his gaze turning to the young.
It would have to be someone with a bright mind, someone with the courage to face the unknown and the heart to return home.
The villagers exchanged glances, and slowly one name began to surface in whispered tones. Nia. She was a young girl with a spark in her eyes, known for her kindness and intelligence. Nia had always been a curious soul, asking questions that made the elders chuckle, and the younger ones roll their eyes. Her mother had once said that Nia's mind was like a firefly in a jar, flickering with ideas and dreams that no one quite understood. Chief Tembo saw the murmurs settle on Nia's name and nodded in agreement.
Nia, you will be our light. You will carry Masara's hopes and dreams beyond these mountains. You will see the world, learn from it, and return to teach us what you find.
When Nia heard her name, she felt her heart swell with pride and fear. She had dreamed of exploring beyond the hills, but to actually be chosen filled her with both excitement and uncertainty. The villagers approached her, each offering small gifts, a woven scarf, a bag of dried fruits, a handful of coins, all they had to send her on her way. The children gathered around her, their eyes shining with admiration and curiosity. That night, as the villagers blessed her journey under the branches of the Omwa tree, Nia realized that she wasn't just living for herself. She was living with the dreams of her village, a responsibility that weighed as heavily on her as it filled her with purpose. Nia looked up at the stars, each one a distant beacon of light, and whispered to herself,
I will make you all proud.
Nia awoke to the sound of birds singing, their cheerful songs mingling with the hum of early morning preparations. Outside, she could hear her mother's familiar voice, directing the villagers who had come to help with her farewell. Today was the day she would leave Masra, the only home she had ever known, to journey to the city. Her heart pounded with excitement, but fear whispered at the back of her mind, reminding her of the countless unknowns that lay ahead. As she stepped outside, she was greeted by the sight of nearly the entire village gathered in the square. Friends, neighbors, elders, and children watched as she made her way to the center, each face a blend of pride and bittersweet emotion. Her father stood quietly beside her mother, who held a small bundle wrapped in a vibrant cloth. Her mother pulled her aside, looking at her with eyes that seemed both sad and joyful.
Take this. It is a reminder that no matter how far you go, Masara is always with you. This village is in your heart.
Nia nodded, her own eyes brimming with tears. She felt the weight of their expectations, their hopes woven into that bracelet and carried in her heart. She hugged her mother tightly, and her father gave her shoulder a reassuring pat. We're proud of you, Nia, he said softly, though his voice was heavy with emotion. You'll make us all proud. Chief Tembo, the village elder, stepped forward next. His tall, commanding figure cast a shadow over Nia as he looked down at her with a mixture of pride and gravity.
You are about to walk a path that none from Masara have taken before, he said, his deep voice resonating in the morning air. You will see things we have never known, learn skills we cannot imagine, and face challenges that we do not yet understand. But always remember, you do this for us, for our people. You are our light, Nia. May you shine brightly. With these words, Chief Tembo placed a small leather pouch in her hand, the village's meager savings gathered from each family. They had little, but they gave what they could spare, a gesture of both sacrifice and hope. Nia took the pouch, her hands trembling with the weight of their generosity. This money, though modest, represented countless hours of labor, of sacrifice, of love. She clutched it tightly, knowing she would honor their gift. As the villagers gathered around her, each person offered something, a dried fruit, a woven scarf, a bracelet of simple beads. Children tugged at her skirt, slipping tiny stones or small treasures into her hands, their eyes wide with admiration. Nia accepted each offering with a grateful heart, feeling the village's love enveloping her like a warm embrace. She turned to wave one last time as she began her journey down the narrow path leading out of Masara. Her family, friends, and neighbors watched as her figure grew smaller in the distance, their hopes and dreams carried on her shoulders. They waved until she disappeared from sight, each of them feeling the tug of sadness mingled with pride. With each step, Nia's anticipation grew, her mind racing with thoughts of the world beyond Masara. She had heard stories of the city, of buildings that reached the sky, of machines that whirred and buzzed with life, of people moving as fast as rivers. But her imagination could barely capture the reality that awaited her. Her heart pounded with both excitement and trepidation, and she quickened her pace, eager to reach her destination and fulfill the role her village had entrusted her with. The journey was long, and with each passing mile, her feet grew sore. But she pushed on, driven by the sense of purpose that filled her. She walked until she reached the city's outskirts, where the sky was stained a strange mix of grays and browns, clouded by the dust and smoke that hovered over the rooftops. The quiet fields and gentle hills of Masara were far behind her now, replaced by bustling streets and towering buildings that loomed like giants. The sound of horns, shouts, and engines filled the air, a stark contrast to the peaceful songs of Masara's birds. Nia took a deep breath, steadying herself as she stepped into the bustling city square. Everything was unfamiliar. People moved quickly, their faces set with purpose, and no one seemed to notice the young girl from the village standing among them. For the first time, Nia felt the enormity of her task. She was no longer surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of Masara. Here, she was a stranger in a world that moved at a speed she struggled to keep up with. Her mind buzzed with thoughts of her village, of her family's sacrifices, of Chief Tembo's words. The villagers had given everything they could to send her here. She would not let them down. She would study hard, learn all she could, and return home stronger and wiser. She clutched the small leather pouch filled with the villagers' offerings, feeling its comforting weight. As she stood there, gathering her courage, she noticed her own reflection in a nearby window. A small young girl with wide eyes and a heart filled with the hopes of an entire village. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of her mother's words. Masara was with her. No matter how far she went, her roots remained strong. The city awaited her, a vast and unfamiliar landscape full of challenges, mysteries, and dreams. Nia straightened her shoulders and took her first true step into the unknown, her heart steady and her resolve unbreakable.